Good morning, everyone. Woo! Good to see you. And welcome to Unity Phoenix. Welcome to our Sunday worship celebration. My name is Richard Mirage. I'm the senior minister here, and it's great to see you all, and welcome.
And my name is Jimmy Scott. I'm one of the three Musketeers?
I think it's the three wise guys.
Oh,
That's what I think it is.
I'm stooge number 3. I'm Reverend Richard Rogers, and I lead the Wednesday night service. And our intent for today is for you to have a profound experience of God. We want you to feel the presence of God within you and all around you, and be so inspired by that you're committed to living your greatest possible life.
All right. And our mission statement is going to appear up on the screen. And first, I just want you to take a deep breath. And I want you to speak and affirm this, because this is who we are, what we stand for, and what we are creating, and who we want to be as a community. So let's say it together, all with feeling and a sense of ownership. Together. Unity of Phoenix is a loving, spiritual community that welcomes all people and honors all paths to God.
We are dedicated to transforming lives by inspiring and awakening individuals to discover God's Spirit within them.
Amen.
If you have your cell phones with you, I want to encourage you to either place those on silence or vibrate, and Sally Jo will lead us in our meditational song. Surely the presence of the Lord is in this place. Just allow those words to be the pathway for you to take a few moments to turn away from the external world and to turn inwardly. And as you begin the process of turning inwardly, just begin to slowly relax your body. And consciously slow your mind down. Just temporarily set aside all of the busyness of your life, all the busyness of this day, all the plans and activities that you have set for the forthcoming week. And just allow yourself to be fully present to this moment. The prophet Khalil Gibran reminded us that the current moment in actuality is the only moment that is guaranteed to us. And therefore, we should get the most and the best from it. And maybe the way to get the most and the best is to simply be open and receptive to God's divine Spirit within you. So I invite you to take a deep, refreshing breath. And again, just get comfortable and relaxed in your seat. And for the next few moments, just allow yourself to be quiet and to be still and to truly experience the power that is within you. So once again, a deep breath. Release it. Just let go. Today, as you're mindful of this marvelous planet we live on, as you're mindful of your incredible life, I invite you to also be mindful of all the trouble spots in our world, all the people on our prayer list who have called and requested that we be in prayer with them. And just know that God's abundance and God's blessings are moving forth through each and every one of us to bring about healing, to bring about transformation, to intensify the level of joy and love, laughter and acceptance that already exist in our world. For all of these incredible opportunities, may we be ever so grateful. And so it is. And amen.
Our Father, who art in heaven, hallowed be thy name. Thy kingdom come, thy will be done on earth as it is in heaven. Give us this day our daily bread, and forgive us our debts as we forgive our debtors. And leave us not in temptation, but deliver us from evil. For thine is the kingdom, and the power, and the glory forever.
Okay, so you guys ready for today? So my question for you, the question that I have for you is, do you feel safe? Do you feel safe in your life? On a scale of 1 to 10, 10 being the highest, 1 being the lowest, how safe do you feel? How safe do you feel in your work, in your home, in your neighborhood? How safe do you feel as you drive your car, to go to the store? How safe do you feel? I did an in-service training for a school in Mesa several years ago. And the focus of what they wanted to do was to create a learning environment where the students felt safe. Because what we quickly realized that if the students don't feel safe, they're not learning. You can't learn if you don't feel safe. Because if you don't feel safe, all of your energy is focused on the thing that is making you feel unsafe. And so we had to create an environment for the students to feel safe. And many of these kids came from challenging economic situations. They'd come to school, and some of them would be hungry, and it's like, so what does it take for these kids to feel safe? And then after we worked on what it would take for the kids to feel safe, we quickly realized that for the kids to feel safe, guess who else had to feel safe? The teachers and the faculty had to feel safe. And we had to create an environment where the whole learning community could feel safe. So when you look at your life financially, politically, medically, do you feel safe? If you got sick today, do you feel safe? Because this Martin Luther King weekend, as we celebrate all that he did, one of the things that he stood for was creating a world where everybody got to be safe. And it's the one thing we all want, whether you're an inner city kid or you're on fixed income out in Sun City or you're a family in the suburbs, we all want to know that we're safe. And until we really feel safe, we're kind of locked into just a bit of struggle. It's hard. And so what does it take today for you to feel safe? What would it take for you today to feel profoundly, completely, totally safe? And can you see that as the safer you feel, the more it opens to the grace and the blessings of God? So today we're going to focus on that. Because it doesn't matter how much money you make, or it doesn't matter all the things you have or don't have, or where you live or where you don't live. Until we feel safe, we're missing a big piece. Last October, they came to Richard and I, and they asked us to write an article on 40 days of fearless living. We had been doing our radio show for about 2 months at that point. They came to us at the end of October and said, would you guys be willing to write an article on what it takes to live fearlessly, what it takes to live in a way that moves us beyond the fears of the past? And we said yes. We wrote the article, and on day 16, it was a 30-day process last November where they had an article a month on unity.org, and we were the middle article right in the middle of the month on the 16th. When we get to share 4 ideas that we think are fundamentally important for people to know, to live, to feel safe, to live fearlessly. So I'm going to give you those 4 ideas. And the first idea that we shared in the article was the idea of dedicating your life to God. And I'm going to read just a little segment of it. There's something that happens when you turn your life over to God or your higher power. You no longer live for yourself, but you begin to access greater power and confidence. When you surrender your will and ask to do the will and work of God, you're no longer trying to figure things out to keep yourself safe. God is now in charge of your life. And you are here not only to do your own desires, but to fulfill your divine purpose. Your prayer simply becomes, thy will be done. How many of you were raised in a spiritual community where they did altar calls? Anybody? Now, if you're raised in a spiritual community where they do altar calls, this would be the time in the service where I'd invite you to come forward and dedicate your life to God. Right? How many of you have ever experienced something like that, where you were invited to come forward and dedicate your life to God? And it's a big deal, right? You come forward, you dedicate your life to God. There's usually weeping involved and praying, maybe a baptism, maybe a good slap on the forehead, right? And you walk away from that experience really feeling like you dedicated your life to God, that you and God were now one, that you had now really dedicated, and that God was in charge of your life. Right? And sometimes we want to do that without really doing it in our heart. Many of us dedicated our life to God through the 12 steps. You remember that? Step number 3? I make a decision to turn our will and our lives over the care of God as we understand Him. Millions of people dedicated their lives through the 12-step community. For me, it happened through the mastermind steps. The mastermind steps were a thing that were created through Jack Boland that took the 12 steps, and they took the work of Napoleon Hill and created mastermind groups. And at step number 4, it says, I decide to be changed. I make the decision to surrender my will and my life to God, to the mastermind, and ask to be changed at depth. So my question for you today is, have you dedicated your life to God? Have you really decided to put God first in everything? Right? So the joy of this is we all have free will. And for many of us, it's such a joy to have free will, because you can ask God what the highest and the best was, but you always have your plan B. If it doesn't work out, if God's asking for too much, if it looks out of control, if it looks like God's going way over the top, you can say, well, thank you very much, but because I have free will, I'm going to go out on my own way. Right? And you can actually do that for as long as you want to do it. But the moment you dedicate your life to God and put God first, you now have a new organizing principle. And whatever you understand God to be, pure goodness, pure love, pure wisdom, the moment you dedicate yourself to that, it becomes the organizing principle of everything. So today, would you be willing to dedicate your life to God? Totally, completely, to turn your will and your desires over to God. To hold nothing back. To give God your hopes and your dreams and your fears and your insecurities. And to feel what it feels like to know that you are dedicated to a power that created the universe. And I thought about doing an altar call. I thought, you don't have to email Richard. I wouldn't get it. I'd go back to Wednesday night service, No harm, no foul. If it doesn't work, oh well, you give it a shot. It'd probably be the only Unity church in the country today that did an altar call. And I thought, well, it would get people a little ruffled, but, there'd be some people, I can slap people in the forehead the best as anybody. But I thought, what's the real spiritual principle? What's the real spiritual principle? It's when your heart, my heart, says, I dedicate myself to God, to the greatest good I know. To a good that's greater than my own mind, my own understanding, my own thinking. I dedicate myself to God. And so would you be willing today to dedicate your life to the God of your understanding? To the greatest good you know? To the highest vibration in the universe? To the absolute best of the best and the holiest of the holy? I dedicate myself to God. Are you willing to say that today? Together? I dedicate myself to God. One more time like we actually mean it. Together? I dedicate myself to God. One more time. Third time to really anchor it. I dedicate myself to God. Now I want you to just breathe into that for a moment. What if you no longer have to figure it out? What if you no longer have to be afraid because now you've dedicated yourself to God, and whatever God calls upon you, God knows that it's in you to do that. God knows that it's in you to be that big, to live that fiercely, to be that faithful, to be that bold. I dedicate myself to God. I dedicated myself to being the best version of myself, and God knows what that is. God created me to be that great. I dedicate myself to God. I want you to feel that. Really feel how you would live that day in and day out. I dedicate myself to God. The second point we made. Deep listening. There's a deep knowing within you. Your soul knows how to keep you safe. Your soul can guide you into a greater life. Your soul can access infinite wisdom. We need to listen to the deeper conversations of our soul. And as we listen to our own inner voice, we are consistently amazed at what is revealed to us. I dedicate myself to God, and then I begin to deeply listen to what the voice of my own soul is saying, because your soul is having a conversation with God always. But at 90 miles an hour, sometimes it's hard to hear. And the more that we begin to listen to the deeper conversations of our soul, the more wisdom that we begin to access. It is as though we have an access to the mind of God. Your soul has permission to access the mind of God. Infinite wisdom. And as we listen deeply, that wisdom of God guides us and directs us in all things. How many of you Google? Anybody use the Google? Right? I used the Google yesterday. We're trying to figure out how many meters are a mile. Anybody know that? I didn't know that. I'm sure everybody else in the room knew that. I didn't know that, right? So we Googled it, right? Because I didn't want to hold that information in my brain, because why hold it in your brain when you can just Google it and access the infinite mind of Google, right? Right? But that's kind of the point, right? We all have access to there's a level of information, there's a level of wisdom, there's a level of understanding, but the only requirement is that we listen to our own soul long enough to begin to access it. So what is God saying to you? What is God asking of you? Where is God moving you and directing you in your life? Are you willing to hear the voice of God? Are you willing to hear the voice of the mind of God that is being spoken in your own soul? And then 3. 3 is courageous action. That it's not just enough to hear the mind of God. You have to be willing to put it into work. And I think of Martin Luther King today. You know, it would have been easy for him just to hear what he was being called to do. But what made it miraculous, what changed the world, is that he had the courage to put his wisdom and his guidance to work in such a way that it changed the world. See, the mind of God will reveal to you anything you want to know. It will guide you and direct you to the most amazing life. But every day we have to have the courage to put it into effect. We have to actually live it, because it's in the living that our faith comes alive. It is what they say, the proof of the pudding. Right? It's what we're walking and talking and living that makes the difference in our world. So I got a little question for you. Are you willing to listen to what God's saying in you and put it into effect to see how it works for you? How many of you have a situation now in your life? Does everybody have at least one situation? You know what I mean by that? That one of those things, one of those life experiences, and that many times in our situations, we want to say, well, I don't know what to do, right? That is absolutely an appropriate response from your intellect. Does your soul ever not know what to do? Your soul always knows what to do. So listen deeply, and then have the courage to put it into effect. Now, try that 2 or 3 times. Right? Try it 2 or 3 times and see how it works for you. And then on the 4th time, do it your own way. Right? So if God says go left, then you just go right just for grins. Right? Just to see how it works. And as we see how it works, we are actually inspired to live a greater life. And that leads us to 4. Enlightened review. Enlightened review is the process of monitoring how God is doing in your life. Because if God says go this direction and you go this direction and it works beautifully, I want you to know that. If God says go this direction and you went that direction and it worked beyond your wildest dreams, go that way. See, over and over again, as we listen to what we're given and execute it courageously, put it into effect, it actually builds our faith in God and it builds our faith in ourselves. But if we don't review it, if we don't notice it, sometimes we're living it and we don't even realize how effectively, how amazing the mind of God is in our life. That we have the opportunity today to put amazing things that would transform the world. Because honestly, people, we are at a crossroads. We are literally at a crossroads in history. We're either going to create a world where everyone gets to feel safe, or everyone gets to feel safe. Where our family gets to feel safe. Where our neighbor's family gets to feel safe. Where people on the other side of the planet get to feel safe. Or we're going to create a world of complete chaos. And on this weekend, where we celebrate a man who dedicated his life to God, who listened deeply to what God called him to do, and had the incredible faith and courage in the face of unbelievable obstacles to put it into effect. It changed the world. And all of us believe, well, that was great for him. That was maybe even easy for him. But you don't know where I am. You don't know what I'm going through. You don't know the challenges that are before me in my life. Right? But the truth is, until we dedicate ourselves to God, until we start deeply listening to the voice of God within us, to accessing the mind of God within our own soul and put it into practice, we can't shift the world into a world that works for everybody. And we're at this critical moment. So you ready? So here's what I'm asking. And it's a big one. It's a big ask. It is a big ask. I know it's a big ask. I'm asking you to decide today if you'd be willing to dedicate your life to God. Well, Richard, is there door number 2? Could I do it? Could I dedicate my life on Tuesdays? Tuesdays will be God days, right? And whatever God wants to do on Tuesday, I'm all over it. And then the other 6 days, I get to do whatever the heck I want to do. Well, how many of you have tried that? I have. Right? It didn't work so well. Right? The thing that seems to work the best is to go all in. And decide today that you're going to dedicate all that you are, all that you have, all that you hope to be, your fears, your insecurities, your worries, your goals, you give it all to God. You go all in. You hold nothing back from God. You give it all to God and dedicate everything that you are, everything that you hope to be, to the power in you that is absolutely amazing. And then you begin to listen. Now that I'm all in, God, I'm all ears. Whatever you want from me, my answer is yes. I'm all in. Whatever you've given me to do, I'm willing to do it. If you say go left, I go left. If you say go right, I go right. If the conventional wisdom says I'm crazy, I go in anyway. Because you're first. And then you begin to review if it's working. Is your life getting better? Are you making an impact in the world? Are you living a greater life because you've dedicated yourself to God? Because I know in my life it made a difference. So today I'm asking, dedicate your life to God. Listen deeply. courageous action, and enlightened review. Will you pray with me? And I invite you to open your mind, your heart, your soul to the activity of God that is right here, right now. And God, we are in. We are completely, totally in. We are completely dedicating our life, all that we are, our will, all that we hope to be, our insecurities, our frailty, our past, our goals and our hopes and dreams. We give it all to you. We hold nothing back from you, God. We give you all that we are and all that we could be. And we are willing, maybe for the first time, to deeply, profoundly listen to the conversation you're having within our soul. To listen to the voice of infinite goodness and power and wisdom and love. And we are willing to be wiser than we've ever been before. We're willing to be stronger than we've ever been before. We're willing to be more faithful and courageous. We are willing to be more loving. We are willing to live the life that you've promised us from the beginning. We are willing to act with boldness and confidence and enthusiasm and expectancy and excitement. And we're willing to review the process, to see ways that we could dedicate more, listen deeper, and to act with more courage. For we are your people. We have a covenant with you, God. And we go forth this day excited about what could be, about creating a world where everyone gets to be safe. We're a world that works for every man, woman, and child on this planet. Where we can fulfill the promises that you've made to our soul from the beginning of time. Thank you, God. Thank you, God. Thank you, God. And so it is. Amen. God bless you all. Have a great week.
Everybody, let's all rise now as we affirm together with our kids our prayer of protection. All right, Sam, lead us. Go ahead.
The light of God surrounds us. The love of God enfolds us.
The power of God
protects us, and the presence of God watches over us.
Wherever we are, God is. God bless you, everybody. Let's now close with our song of peace. Thanks, kids. God bless you, everybody. Great day and a wonderful week.